Was born ready.
Hello and welcome to the April edition of the Influential Times. Pleased to be joined by Jack, as usual.
Hello everyone.
As usual, we'll run through some of the top stories from the month, some slightly bigger than others. I'm going to start with an update from LinkedIn. They've actually launched newsletters now, so you'll be able to host newsletters within the platform on company pages. So I think this is really good news because I think traditionally it's been more in the domain of email marketing, and now there's more of a modernisation towards actually hosting newsletters on social platforms, which is all good. This will allow businesses to create longer form content, and it will allow people to subscribe to that content, receive alerts. It can be quite targeted as well based on their interests. One of the really successful sort of case studies out of this has been Zoom. They were one of the early adopters. They've got all of their newsletters on LinkedIn. They actually managed to get 10% of their following on LinkedIn subscribed within the first few days. So they've done really well by moving across there with their newsletters. So yeah, I guess something we were expecting to happen, but it seems to be going pretty well, Jack.
Yeah, I think some features are kind of a big new paradigm shift, and some are just you sort of take something like a format people are familiar with and just make it accessible in more places. I think this feels like a good example of that. Just thinking about what's the basic function of the newsletter? It's to be able to send an update. If people log into LinkedIn a lot, then that seems as good a place as any to do an update. You've probably got a reasonably engaged following on your LinkedIn. So yeah.
Yeah, it sort of follows, I was thinking of that with events as well now, obviously. It almost feels like LinkedIn, you can log in and see a lot of what's going on from there. Like you can invite people to events, you get notifications on that. If you're getting your newsletter notifications, it just removes the need to have so many emails coming in. And maybe people, it will probably get a bit noisy at some point, but LinkedIn are keeping people on their platform, aren't they?
Yeah,
encouraging adoption.
It feels like a smart move.
Yeah,
for sure. And yeah, cut out any of the extra steps. Needing to go through people's inboxes, getting an open and a click or whatever. Feels like a smart move. Kind of similar, related one over in YouTube land, a sort of smallish feature, but they're rolling out what they're calling the super thanks tipping programs. It's not just saying thanks. Tipping is now saying super thanks on YouTube. The amounts are kind of medium sized, but it's specific to a video. I think creators complain on YouTube. One of the core complaints is that ad revenue is really uneven. Some months you can be way up, others you can be way down. And Patreon, I guess, is where most major YouTubers have gone for a kind of sustainable income from fans. I suppose this introduces a kind of halfway house, which is more of a one-off. It's based on the video specifically. So it feels like it would fill in a gap. I don't know if you could see yourself super thanking someone on YouTube or...
It seems like a slightly fairer way, doesn't it? Based on the actual quality of the content itself and maybe how much time someone's put into it, rather than it just being by chance, like you say, on the ad revenue. It feels a little bit fairer. Yeah,
because sort of creators on YouTube have hacked around the ad revenue thing by doing sponsorships basically on the ad, and that feels similar. It's like trying to get more revenue from the video itself. But yeah, possibly. I guess the difficulty with it is you can't sort of, as a creator, you're going to have to do the sponsorship. You don't know if you're going to get the tips until you put the video up. So it's sort of, I feel like it doesn't quite solve that, but it feels like they're kind of gradually nibbling around the edges of the problem, and hopefully they'll get closer to the core of it. My second story is kind of it's another social platform coming at an existing issue from a different angle, and that is Reddit has sort of unveiled more of a kind of community fund, and it's a reasonably small amount. It's about $1 million that they've unveiled, but the idea is it's more around sort of funding projects that Reddit is famous for these small niche communities, and they want to essentially make money available for them to be able to fund a project. So an example would be like doing a day festival somewhere for all the people who are sort of interested in they're all in a subreddit together. And I thought this was quite an interesting way of coming at that question of how do you fund creators. It's sort of going, it's community first, and it's letting it's sort of they're trying to get out the way as much as possible. So yeah, I don't know how you feel about that as a way of doing it. Some examples we had were giving away Costco memberships, money to sort of give away copies of Lord of the Rings for a Lord of the Rings based subreddit, or someone was fundraising to look after horses in Ukraine.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, linking it to good causes is probably something that will be quite successful.
Yeah, it could be. It's good press for Reddit. It's it's feel good for all the people involved.
Yeah,
reasonably small amount. Didn't Facebook say they're putting $1 billion towards their creator fund? I think something like that.
TikTok have done the same, I think, as well.
Yeah,
that we talked about before.
But maybe the sheer amount of cash is not everything. Which brings us neatly on. April's big story. Speaking of huge amounts of cash.
Yeah, we definitely couldn't leave this one out. Obviously, Elon Musk buying Twitter for $44 billion, which is a pretty eye-watering figure, Jack, isn't it?
I spent that at Tesco earlier. Inflation's getting really out of contrul here in the UK.
If you're not a club card holder, you're pretty screwed these days.
Yeah, 44 billion at least on the weekly shop.
Obviously, he did become a shareholder earlier in April. I think he was the largest shareholder.
I think he was the largest individual, person, and there was like a private equity fund or something had a little more than him. But yeah. So
we knew he was sort of creeping in there in April, and then obviously he's now bought the platform. He's always been a big fan of Twitter. That's been no secret. He's built up an audience of 84 million followers. Obviously, he's very sort of, very influential and quite volatile in some of the tweets and things he puts out on different topics. But he's been saying some interesting stuff over the past couple of weeks. Interesting that he said he wants to help Twitter reach its full extraordinary potential. And I think what will be interesting from our perspective in the industry is probably the things that could change that have been kind of bandied about.
Yeah, you had some ideas.
I think some of the things that have been talked about was the loosening of content rules. So obviously Twitter have been, I wouldn't say like really strict, but they have definitely moderated content, and they've obviously with Trump and people like that.
I think so, yeah, especially since 2016, it feels like it's gotten a little more. They've sort of tried to tighten things up. They had the sort of community moderation project they put a fair amount of effort into as well to kind of try and get people almost moderating each other or trying to be, all these prompts to be more thoughtful. I don't know whether he's talking about tearing that down completely or...
Yeah, it's an interesting one. He's obviously talking about free speech and all this kind of stuff. I think, it's an interesting one. It's a little bit contradictory as well, because I know he's blocked people in the past who've been critical of him or some of his organisations. So, whether he really believes in it or not. And there's been a few kind of industry experts also sort of, I guess, giving a few warning signs about, taking down content moderation. And actually a laissez-faire approach perhaps is a little bit dangerous.
But then I think I've heard talk about verifying users as well more.
For bots?
More strictly. So it's kind of vaguely possible to see a pathway towards that, I think, where you verify people more closely. So you sort of have to post as yourself.
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical about that, whether that is possible, whether people will game it, whether people will... Sometimes verification doesn't stop people trolling as well. Often people say the most absolutely awful things in their own name.
100%. It's interesting, and I think with the content stuff, I'm not sure if it's just stuff he's saying at the moment, and he's probably going to find a few challenges over the next months and years. There's a lot of government stuff going on at the moment as well, in terms of like tightening up on moderation, in terms of online abuse and things like that. So there seems to be more barriers going up rather than down, which I think he's going to stumble across. Which will be interesting to see what happens. There's also a lot of talk around ads and advert revenue. There's obviously Twitter Blue subscription service without adverts, and it seems noise he's been making is that he wants to revamp and improve that side of things, so more of a subscription basis. Obviously, the majority of people know Twitter as like a free platform, and more of the ad side of things. So, and I think I saw somewhere, I think it's 90% of their revenue is ads at the moment.
Okay. That's a lot. That's more than I thought.
Yeah, and again, people are saying that it might be perhaps a dangerous tactic to kind of focus more on the subscription model, but
Yeah, you kind of, I guess if you can monetize the real power users, it does feel like the fundamental insight there is that lots of people do rely heavily on Twitter as a kind of daily feed of news and things like that. So maybe there's a sort of 10-15% group, and if you set it right, you could build it up. I think you might struggle though, as you say, there's a lot of casual users and people very used to it being free. And it's interesting, it's sort of, if you think about Elon as a figure, it feels like he almost is a product of like an age of the internet that was more about sort of free and open use, and that's where the sort of free speech thing comes from, I think. And it's interesting to then see him also talking about kind of monetizing through that, monetizing through a sort of subscription model, which is a form of barrier if you have to pay to play, and it can be a good way of dealing with the trolling as well. Like if people have to, maybe just submitting their own name, no, but if you had to pay $10 a month just to be able to say horrible things, maybe you just go find somewhere else to do it.
You can't just keep setting up multiple accounts, right?
Yeah, it'd be an expensive habit to troll.
Yeah.
Interesting how it all ties together.
Yeah, the other point was the editing tweets thing, which feels like it's been talked about for a little while now.
You can hear a sharp intake of breath around the world from the from the Twitter engineering team, I would imagine, thinking about that, because I would guess the way their architecture is sorted is just, I'd be surprised if it has a way of dealing with that, and it's probably not impossible, but I could see how that's a big technical challenge to kind of go back and re-edit stuff, not to mention the kind of bad faith use where...
Yeah, exactly.
A really common thing that happens as a trolling tactic is after someone retweets arguing with a user, people then change their username because they can to be like, the person I'm arguing with is an idiot or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I've been looking into it today actually, and just sort of, trying to get my head around it, and it is interesting. It's, like I was thinking about, because I read one thing that said that you could have it where if you edited a tweet, you lose all of your engagement. So you're kind of editing it like if you did it straight after you tweeted and you haven't lost anything, and then you can kind of
or you'd sort of reset it. The engagement to zero, basically,
which would stop what you were saying. Another thought I had was like, what if you just said like you could change 5 characters of a tweet? Like, because the most common
typos,
thing, people get annoyed when it's a typo, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you could edit a typo, but then if you're letting people change 10 words, then it gets a bit messy, doesn't it?
The substantive content of it.
So I think what I'm saying is I think they could get it right in some way if there was like a limit on characters or some kind of...
Or a time limit.
Or a time limit or engagement or whatever.
Lots of platforms have a kind of undo, like, are you sure? Do you want to just quickly reread this? Could be another way of handling that, but...
I just don't think a full, like, you can edit whatever tweet you want from whenever, at whatever length, could be a dangerous move.
Yeah, it feels like it comes down to a sort of a power user's experience of Twitter, and that would be a very big concern. I think if I had millions of followers, the edit button seems like something I would really worry about. But as an ordinary user of Twitter, I'm not sure I really mind. You can usually tell what someone means.
Yeah.
I think pointing out typos is slightly tedious behaviour anyway.
Yeah.
In someone's tweet, if the point makes sense and you can still understand, then I'm not sure it matters.
Yeah.
And I think that feels like the whole thing at stake with all of this. Like, is Elon's analysis of what the platform is like for most users good enough based on his experience of using it as someone with 84 million followers, was it?
Yeah.
I think that will sort of determine his success, is whether he's able to kind of engage with what any of those 84 million people feel like when they use the app and what challenges they have, what they want to see. Maybe he's right.
Yeah. We'll see.
I think he might struggle.
Yeah.
Put it that way. What do you think?
It's quite interesting, isn't it? I think there's a lot of noise at the moment of things he's claiming, but I think there's enough smart people at Twitter to be in the know about what really should be happening.
Yeah, talk him out of the bad ideas, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's 6 months till the deal's finalised, I think. So he'll hopefully have more time to kind of put his thoughts together in an organised way, and maybe he'll do that publicly and come back to. You guys can come back to the Influential Times. I'm sure we'll cover it if it's on. But
yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of other bits and bobs coming out.
Stay tuned, folks. Nothing really confirmed yet, I guess. So that is us for the April roundup. We will be back in a month. we'll see you when we will see you again for another episode of The Influential Times. Thanks for watching.
Cheers, everyone.